Dear friends, I am Naresh Dadhich. Today we are going to discuss the most important contemporary political thinker, that is John Rawls, one of my favorite. I have just published a book on John Rawls. This is the book which is published by Rawls Publications in Jaipur and which is available on Amazon also. Let me introduce this book to you. It is a brief summary of the book, because I believe that this book is very important for the teachers and for the students who want to know John Rawls at its elementary level. It is not a very exhaustive or very scholarly work. I have tried to simplify the argument of John Rawls, which I believe is one of the most important political philosophers of today. The book is divided in some chapters, and the first important chapter is about his concept of justice, that is justice as fairness. So in this chapter I briefly summarizes his whole argument in his book on theory of justice. That was his magnum opus published in 1971, and he defined justice as fairness. So this is a summary of his argument. When we say justice as fairness, then there are two principles which are part of the theory of justice as fairness. So the next chapter is on the first principle. What is the first principle? The first principle is about the priority of liberty. He defined that everybody should have equal amount of maximum liberty. That is the first principle of justice. Then the second principle comes. The second principle is about the socio-economic inequality, how to minimize it or how to erase it. And then there are two sections of the second principle. One is called the difference principle, according to which we should try to minimize socio-economic injustice in a way which benefits maximum to the least advantageous person of the society. And the second B is about giving equal opportunity and offices to all the persons. Then the next chapter is about original position and its justification. We know when John Rawls has given his theory of justice, he talks of both aspects of justice, that is the substantive justice as well as the procedural justice. He argues that if the process by which justice principles are established, if they are not just, then we cannot reach at the goal of attaining a theory of justice. So he provides a process by which these principles arrived. This process begins with a hypothetical situation called original position. So this chapter deals with that original position, which can be compared with social contractualists and their theory of state of nature, Hobbesian theory or Lockean theory of state of nature. There are some similarities, but there are quite a lot of difference between original position and state of nature. The most important thing is a concept of wheel of ignorance, which is very important in original position, because in original position, when the individuals assemble and they want to establish a state based on a theory of justice, then Rawls introduced here wheel of ignorance, which means that this well of ignorance is about that the individuals who are participating in this process, they should forget about their past. They should not be biased. So it is a veil of ignorance. That is what he calls it. And then the next is the chapter is about the duty and obligations. When a state is established on the principle of justice as fairness, then Rawls talks about the duties and obligations of the citizens. Here is very importantly points out his theory of civil disobedience, and we can always compare his theory of civil disobedience with Thoreau's theory of civil disobedience or Gandhian theory of civil disobedience. There are some important work dealing with this also. Then we have a theory of the good, because in his theory, which is a deontological theory, good is totally different from good is defined on the basis of the rights, because rights are given priority over good. It is not that the principle of good and right is very important in philosophical discourse, and I have dealt with this chapter explaining Rawlsian theory of good in the context of his theory of rights. Then we have his second book, Political Liberalism. This was published in 1993, and in which he tried to improvise upon a theory of justice which was published in 1971. The improvisation basically was towards making it more practical, and so in this book, Rawls has tried to implement his theory of justice, which is very abstract and normative, to concrete situation in the world, and tried to implement it on the states which claim to be liberal. So this is a chapter dealing with this book. Then in the book there is an important concept which emerges, that is the idea of a well-ordered society, and I have devoted the next chapter explaining this idea of well-ordered society. Then the last book which Rawls wrote in 1999 as a philosophical, you can say, last book of the trilogy, that is The Law of Peoples. Here Rawls applies his theory of justice at the international arena, and he believes that in the actual situation not all states are liberal, there are some non-liberal states also. So how to deal with them, that is what he explained in this. So how to make law of peoples as the basis of international law. So this chapter is devoted to explaining this book particularly. And the last is about the critique of John Rawls. It is not that everybody accepted John Rawls' theory, but no one can ignore John Rawls. So there are many critiques, very important critiques of John Rawls, and John Rawls also taken very seriously about his critiques. That is why he took more than 20 years to write his next book, because he tried to incorporate all the major criticism in his own political theory. In this chapter I have tried to systematize the different critiques, like the critiques of Amartya Sen, which is very important, feminist critique, communitarian critique, and libertarian critiques, and then other critiques. So it is very important chapter to know about the fallacies of fallacies in the argument of John Rawls, which were pointed out by many other scholars. And the last one is the conclusion, where I would like to conclude that John Rawls, with all its pitfalls in his political theory, is still one of the greatest political philosophers of 20th century in particular, and in general of history of political theory. So his contribution is very important. So this is the book which I recommend to all those who would like to know John Rawls in the initial stage, because once you are familiar with this and the references which are given in this book, then I suppose that if you are interested more, then you can go on and read this book and other books to have a more comprehensive knowledge about John Rawls. Thank you very much.